Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is JC if you haven't seen my face before, and today's video is my September reading wrap-up and October TBR. If you've watched my wrap-ups in the last several months, you would know I can't do a wrap-up without my matcha. Like, I don't make the rules, okay? It's just a part of a routine, it's a part of a habit, an addiction, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It just makes me feel so good. It's the perfect fall drink for me, but it's also perfect year-round because of it being iced. If it's just all the categories, I love it. Okay, I'm going to use my September reading spread to kind of just give an overview of how this month went. So I read 11 books this month. My average rating was a little over 4 stars. So overall, amazing reading month. And I read 4,358 pages. I like keeping track of the number of pages I read because in August, I think I read one more book, but I only read 100 more pages. So I just like keeping track of that because it does help me gauge, like, well, maybe you just read less books this month, but they were thicker in pages, so you really read the same amount. You know, like, I just kind of like thinking about that stuff. But let's go ahead and let's jump into the books that I read in September. I usually just go through them in the order that I read them. I give a rating and then a kind of quick synopsis of what the book is. I do try to keep it heavily to like just the information that you get from reading the back of the book and then kind of just my opinion, I suppose. The first book I read this month was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely adored this book. I was a little nervous to get into it because it just has more mixed reviews versus other Emily Henry reads, but you're following Charlie and Nora. They both work in the publishing editing industry, so they've crossed paths before just throughout work. But they both end up in this small town when Nora and her sister are on this kind of just recharge of life getaway. And then you're not told on the back why Charlie's there, so I don't want to say why he's there. But I just loved that this story was not your typical timeline of romances and like just the standard kind of formula, I guess, in a romance book. And I related to Nora so much. I understood so much of why she was doing what she was doing, why she was feeling what she was feeling. And I loved watching her grow into learning more about herself, navigating her relationship with her sister, her work, herself, and of course, Charlie. The next book I read was The Left-Handed Booksellers of London by Garth Nix. I gave this book 3.75 stars. Now, this fantasy set in alternate London gave off such Fantastic Beast vibes. I loved how easy the author's writing was. It is primarily a fantasy book with a very, very small subplot of romance, which I liked. It worked for this book. Now, the main plot is there's this old world that has various creatures and such, and then our new world, kind of our reality. And occasionally, those old world creatures kind of creep into the new world, causing some chaos and havoc, and that's where the left-handed booksellers come in. They're the ones that just come in and do all the handiwork to kind of keep the creatures tame and like fix up any mayhem that may have happened. And then we have the right-handed booksellers that are more the ones with the brain. Poor Susan is your average human being. She's about to head into college. She has no idea about any of this, and she's just quickly thrown into it the summer before she starts college. Okay, I'm going to talk about these books together, but I read books 2, 3, and 4 of Harry Potter this month. I read it for my Read and Watch series. I didn't rate any of these books because it just really, it doesn't make sense for me to rate them. I don't know how I could rate them based on the book when I just overall love Harry Potter so much in the entire world. I love Universal, the movies, everything. So it's like, I don't want to say these are just like 5-star books, but it's all the feelings. I love the world so much. So I didn't give any ratings for these, but obviously I'm going to recommend the Harry Potter series. Another month, another Alice Feeney book. This month I read Sometimes I Lie. I gave this book 4 stars. Now, I absolutely love this book, and I went into it relatively blind. I think I only talked about it in my weekly reading vlog pretty briefly, and I only gave away what was at the very top of the synopsis, like inside cover page, so that's what I'm going to say here. I believe it went something along the lines of, "Hi, my name is Amber Reynolds, and there are 3 things that you should know about me. 1, I'm in a coma. 2, my husband doesn't love me anymore. And 3, sometimes I lie." This was so good. It's kind of like 3 timelines. You get a glimpse into her childhood, you get a glimpse into a pre-coma, and then you get her in like present time in the coma, but still like consciously aware of what's going on. Read the book. Next up, I read The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It is such a fun, lighthearted, surface-level rom-com with all the spooky vibes. So if you take it for what it is and don't go into this expecting some deep, heartfelt romance book, I think you'll like it. You're following Vivian and Reese, and they had this past romance where it didn't end so well. And Vivian kind of just dealing with those breakup emotions. She's drinking wine with her sister. They kind of put this silly hex on Reese, you know, just having fun. And they don't think anything of it until 9 years later when Reese returns to town and homeboy is having some bad luck. So you're just watching them navigate that hex that she 100% put on him, and just now they're obviously having to interact together 9 years later. Next up, I read The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I gave this book 4 stars. This was my first Frida McFadden book. I loved her writing. It reminded me so much of Alice Feeney, where it's just so fast-paced. The chapters are pretty short. I'm assuming other Frida McFadden books also have duo timeline. Like, that's pretty consistent in Alice Feeney's books as well. It's so good. So this one is following Brooke, who just took a new nurse practitioner's position at a men's maximum security prison. So none of the staff know that she already knows a prisoner in there, and it was her testimony that landed him in there with a life sentence. That's all I'm gonna say. Next, I read In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I gave this book 3.5 stars. It's the second book in the Lovelight Farms series. It's kind of an interconnected standalone series. You can bounce around from book to book. Like, let's be honest, the only spoiler you're getting is that the two main characters of a book got together. Like, we already knew it was happening, you know? We already saw it coming. So this book is following Evelyn and Beckett. Evelyn is a social media influencer who uses her platform to put a spotlight on various small businesses, and Beckett works at one of those said small businesses. Their paths have crossed before a couple times, and now she is back at Lovelight Farms looking for her happy. Next, I read The Killer Instinct by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I gave this book 4.5 stars. It's the second book in the Naturals series. So the overall series is about the FBI creating this classified program to bring in these teenagers that have enhanced abilities in things like profiling, detecting lies, reading emotions, understanding statistics, and just things that FBI cares about, right? So this program is essentially created to help those teenagers, I don't know, gain that skill set in a more controlled way, you know, build it up, and then also help the FBI close cold cases. Book 2 was so much fun. I loved the story continuing to unfold and just getting more things, more information on all the characters. It was a good time. The last book that I read this month was Under the Influence by Noelle Crooks. This was such an interesting literary fiction novel. What the hell? You're following Harper, who lives in New York City, and she wants to be a writer. But listen, life is hard. Life is expensive. So to get a better income, she takes on this new position that was recently put up by a self-help guru, Charlotte Green. So Harper gets thrown into this new world of just like influencers, and she's quickly learning that you shouldn't always believe what you see on the internet, and there is definitely a dark side to that world. It's kind of this modern day Devil Wears Prada. It was so interesting. I definitely recommend it, especially if you are really invested in influencing and just that world around it, and you yourself like find these people that you definitely idolize and like look up to in the influencing world. It's such a good book. Okay, that wraps up the September wrap-up portion. Now I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys a lot of my October TBR. I do have my fall like recommendations and TBR video where I listed a bunch of books that I want to be reading this fall, but there are a few books that like I really want to be reading in October. You know, Halloween, spooky vibes, all of that. Let's get into it. We're back with more stacks of books. Like, this is ridiculous. I really hope to read some more Frida McFadden this month, so I did check out the second book from my library literally yesterday, and I just bought the first one earlier this week, so I guess these need read. Similar situation, I just checked out the second book of this trilogy by Stephen King, and I just bought the first one earlier this week. So I guess these both need read in October. It's the trilogy that the first book is Mr. Mercedes, the second one is Finders Keeper. Right now, I don't even remember what the third one is, but all these three books lead up to Stephen King's recent release, Holly. I plan to read The Sinister Booksellers of Bath. This is the second book after The Left-Handed Booksellers of London. I know it's at least a duology, but I don't know if there's more books planned for this world after this. Another library book I have checked out right now is Pomegranate by Helen Elaine Lee. I honestly am pretty blind right now heading into it, but I remember I saw someone post a review on Instagram, and I was like, wait, I need to read that. So October, here we are. I plan to finish the Natural series, so right now I'm reading All In, and then we have Bad Blood afterwards. Listen, I hope I read this, but I may just return it. I have so many other books that I need to read, but I hope to finish the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy, so this is As Good as Dead. We'll see. The last library book I have is Morningstar. This is the third book in the Red Rising trilogy. There's kind of two trilogy sets things. It's confusing, but Morningstar, I've renewed this several times. I really need to read this. And then the last two, of course, another month, another Alice Feeney read, Good Bad Girl. This came out in September, and I'm so excited to read this. And then the last book that's like, I've been planning to read this in October is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I'm so looking forward to this book.